Hello and welcome back to the Endeavors AI podcast. This is Collin McKee, your host, and today I'm joined by Misha, founder of Mavka Capital. Misha spent years across the M&A space and corporate venture, founder advisory, working directly with B2B companies that are navigating the dangerous middle ground between early traction and real scale. And what makes Mavka Capital different is their focus on founder-led advisory, helping teams get commercially ready before they chase capital rather than the other way around. And today we're going to talk about why so many B2B startups stall in the Series A round and how founders could actually think about commercialization where AI helps inside venture and advisory and where it absolutely does not. So Misha, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you much for inviting. Pleasure to be here. I'm glad to talk to your audience. About me, I'm Misha Edel. I work at Mavka Capital. It's a boutique investment bank. And we primarily work with young technology companies within the B2B space between a seed and a B, and going beyond that for SPAC as well. But focus stays the same. We're trying to help people. We're trying to find their way with them through the commercial markets and through capital formation, and then make them a successful enterprise.
Excellent. Great. Let me start by asking you, what kind of patterns did you see across your roles that eventually pushed you to launch Mavka Capital?
Yeah, I've worked with my founder, co-founder, and the gap we've seen is very clear, right? Especially for B2B, there is a great idea and there is an enterprise solution, right? So the gap between those two is ultimately dramatic, right? And you can't really jump it in the commercial market without very thoughtful understanding of risk, needs, workflows, and ability to actually talk the language and find a specific problem you're trying to solve, not in a kind of innovative solution, right? And that's really the gap, right? And when you talk about that gap, you need to solve for two things at least. One is what you're trying to solve for and actually have a solution. But the second one is more important one, actually, to have the stamina and capital and expertise to actually be at the table with enterprise customers. So those two things will come together, help founders to find the kind of way, and it's really successful. We have a very high rate of getting people to the preferred strategic outcome.
Okay. So I think you may have answered a little bit, but what specifically was missing in the market that founders needed help, but they couldn't find, and that you've kind of filled that gap with Mavka?
Yeah, I think there are two types of approaches. One is that people talk with the founder and they help them to write pitch books, right? I mean, they basically enable them to do stupid things faster. And the other one is working from a financial market perspective. You're looking at the traction and say, well, what's your commercial success? What you've done? Well, we can raise money based on your revenues of $5 million. And then in between, you see a founder which is trying to, basically say, I know my solution, it works. I just don't have a customer yet because, it's hard to get an enterprise customer. So therefore, we felt a need to be able to help this with the story, explain the need, and help a founder navigate financial market in a successful way. So, and it often means finding a very unique set of potential investors to really shorten the time to market, right? Think about it in time. Like if you're a founder and you talk to 100 different investors, like, well, that's your year, which you didn't spend building a company. So therefore, I think it's important to rely on intermediaries like us to actually make it happen.
Okay. And so what differentiates being founder led as an advisory as opposed to a traditional investment bank? Is it kind of the education portion that you're doing? Are there more pieces to that?
Yeah, I think what we do, because we primarily focus on a sell side, right? And the sell side is longer, right? It's a much longer fuse, and we really need to understand the technology those companies deploy, right? Need to understand their customers, why they're doing that. And that's why we go heavily on technology with our founders. We use specialized expert to help us with assessing the technology. And we also go broader, right? We go from an actual growth perspective to strategy formulation to story development to actual fundraising. So I think what I've seen that in typical investment bank, you don't have the luxury and time to actually do all of that. You focus on the last step, which is okay, I got a product, I got to sell the product, right? And that's a transaction, right? Which is very valuable way of making financial market perfect, but it's not solving the problems most of B2B founders on early stages face. And that's kind of our secret sauce, if you will.
Okay. So through the budding stages of the founders coming to market, what's what kind of what stage do you work best with, I guess is what I'm trying to ask. Like what mindset do the founders usually have in common?
That's right. I think the mindset should be that I understand where I am. I just don't know why I'm not getting to the next step, right? And what happened is when you focus on a venture, then it's very hard to think about the year ahead. You're thinking about in terms of months, quarters, right? But fundraising actually takes 6 to 9 months, best case scenario, and it's a long process. The founder actually need to have cash to survive it. So what we find is the best customer we have is people who understand the time and money dilemma, right? They know they need to start fundraising early. They're willing to listen to advice, and they're going forward, right? Because there are some people who are absolutely sure of themselves and they think they can do it everything on their own, which is fine, right? And many of them do. But the statistic doesn't lie. Most of the startup fail, right? So our job is to make sure that people fail less, right? And that's why we're here.
Yep. That kind of answers the next question. So what's a clear sign that the founder isn't ready for you to get involved just yet? You kind of touched on, overconfidence or ego. Are there others? And
Yeah,
then if that happens, do you tell them to come back and do they come back when they are ready?
Yeah, and we'll always stay to come back, right? Because I think if we like technology and we like the approach and we want to stay in touch with the company for a number of reasons, we can help them to raise money, we can help them to exit, or we can find somebody else who want to be partner with them. So that's totally fine. We don't exclude anybody, so to speak. But it's easier, of course, to work with people who understand that, as I said, time of kind of time and money dilemma, right? And people who understand that they don't know everything. I mean, typically people don't know everything about financial markets. It's not their job, right? So we have to explain just enough to help them to understand what the value we bring, right? And then we can go from there, right? So maybe I'll make a joke about my wife actually heard when we were in delivery room. We talked to a doctor, and the doctor said, I would love to be only delivering babies from mothers who are second time mothers, right? He didn't want to have anybody doing it first time. He wanted to be only the second time. So because people obviously know their body better, they understand what to expect. And it's the same goes with founders, right? Obviously, if you've done it before, it's much easier to explain what you need. And to be honest with you, most businesses are not going to be Facebook or OpenAI, right? So but there are tons of great ideas, tons of very talented founders, and I think we owe it to them to actually help them to make it commercial enterprise a viable solution.
Cool. Excellent. So in your experience, it doesn't have to be a set number, but how often do you see these founders coming trying to raise capital before they've actually proven that they've got the commercial traction? Does it happen often or?
Yeah, no, I think if I understand your question correctly, so I think most people come when they have an idea, they have a prototype, and they know that it works, but they need to kind of close the gap. And what we find here is it's very helpful to have a strategic investor who in a company in the same business that they are, and they actually believe in the solution and willing to spend some money to get them through a safe to actual seed round, right? And from a seed round perspective, the company can take off, right? And I think it's very common. The issue really is that what happened after the seed round, if you got commercial traction, right? How do you think about the exit, right? And as we can talk about the next step, but ultimately, how do you create velocity, kind of, take off velocity, and that's kind of part of the magic, right? And each company is unique in doing that.
Yep. So what I'm hearing, like a lot of times, what's waste or what's costing these founders additional time is not understanding the market demand for their product and how how much of it they can sell to begin with, right? And then they have to go back and kind of reprove the marketplace for what they're bringing to market. Is that probably a circular way of saying it.
No, absolutely correct. I mean, I think there are people who think that they change the word, right? And they do it regardless of what the word tells them, right? And sometimes they're unbelievably successful, but it's extremely rare. And there are other people who know the problem and they're trying to solve that particular problem, right? And I think those people are generally much more successful in terms of making an enterprise work, right? And that's where it comes from.
Great. Awesome. So, quick pause for self promotion to our audience members. If you find this useful and valuable, please like the video and think about subscribing to the channel. We do talk with operators like this with different topics, but generally around the venture capital space. So we'd love to have you join the community and drop a comment. Feel free to give some feedback on what you'd like to see, topics of discussion, or where you might have some feedback and disagree with me. I welcome that as well. So, but let's jump back in with Misha here and talk a little bit more about AI, right? Because this is the Endeavors AI podcast, where, and not just the hype, because we see AI plastered all over everything. Kind of hard to navigate through the noise, but where does AI, in your opinion, make a meaningful or is meaningfully supporting your work inside of Mavka Capital?
Oh, for us, it's very simple. I think we, like everybody else, we're trying to boil the ocean, right? So I think, and all those tools out there kind of are very good at making the ocean boil, right? So you can find any information you want, you can research any company you want, you can do whatever you want. I think it really stops at the point how do you going to use a steam, right? Meaning that what you're going to do with all that information, right? In a sense, I find sometimes thinking it didn't narrow down the information I'm looking for. It actually expanded, right? Because I need to understand the sources, then I need to understand how they were interpreted, then I need to make my own judgment about the differences between those two. I think it's a endless kind of loop of us thinking about what's next, right? I think what really you're looking for is, from a broader AI perspective, is you actually have a problem with the data centers, right? And how many we can build and how many we can power and how many, everything we can do. And then you can think about what problems AI is supposed to solve, right? I think it's a very minuscule part of what AI promise. If you write an email or do research of a company, you're just lazy kind of sort of reading the key report, you ask, ChatGPT to do that. That's fine, right? But it doesn't really change anything of what the result's going to be. What does change, and when the AI agent or IoT agent start talking to each other, and you allow kind of AI to really be better than we are, with a number of data points collected, with a number of patterns identified, with a number of immediate real-time solutions. I don't think AI is there yet, right? It's hallucinate too much. I mean, my perfect example was I was in a Cybertruck with a friend, and he asked Croc to read a poetry, which we all knew. It just happens we all knew that particular poem. And Croc was absolutely fascinated, right? It said first four lines perfectly well, and then it went completely off the rail. It was convincingly talking about like something else, pretending to be reading the poem, right? So we have to be a little bit on our guard in terms of how we think about it, right? So we cannot really let the rein investment or kind of real work to really give the reins all the way to the AI, right? So we have to be judgmental about what we receive and what we ask and how do we use it.
Yep. Yep. And you thought ahead and answered my next question, which had to do with, where we have to take the reins. Cause you're right. AI can't just take over it can't be Misha. It doesn't have your experience, and then it definitely does hallucinate and it needs to be checked. So that's also, where I was going to ask where it falls short. But are there tools that you've seen that are proven and you would say these are here to stay. They definitely have benefit. They buy back time,
Yeah, I mean,
and
I think all of them do, right? I think all of the main models do, right? And some people, and I think if you go for code development, obviously people go with Cursor or something else. I think it's really dependent. I think was an interesting paper from Anthropic about how the model shifts and ultimately becomes your friend, right? And you just have to be really aware of that. At some point, you can convince AI to give you, answers about how great you are, right?
Mhm.
You need to be aware of that. And I think in terms of time saving, I think it's really the last mile, right? You do the research, right? But then you have to put it in a workflow which people actually use. And I think that last mile is really not there yet, right? For human consumption, right? I think it's easier for machine to machine communications in a human. I mean, I love, for example, company Alpha Sense. I talked to them a long time ago, but you have, how do you put it into the framework, right? You really need to change your workflow to accommodate. And I think when you do, then it becomes really more powerful than just one person using it to speed up their work, right? And in terms of like where human takes over, right? It's very hard for AI still to read the room, right? Let's put it bluntly, right? And my joke over the years has been that as a consultant in a prior life, I could walk into a company, walk around the hall, look at the offices and people sitting there and know exactly how well they do, right? I don't need to even talk to anybody because you just know how they set up, how they do it, what kind of culture it is, right? Is it backstabbing culture? Is it welcoming culture? And I think that part we really don't want to give to AI, right? It's of course we can try, but I don't think it's useful, right? I think us as human need to retain that part of human. In a sense, technology makes us more human, right? We don't need to serve SAP. We don't need to research invoices. We don't need to write basic codes, right? And that should presumably leave us more time to be humans.
Yep. Yeah, and I was going to ask what, where's the gap and how does it be filled? Do you think that it's, mainly the experience piece that can't be just quantified? It's actually got to be experienced, right? And then is it that AI just defaults to being too optimistic and not really seeing the worst case or what could happen? Like, isn't this a factor of it could get better if we just taught it all of our experience, make sure to look for this tangent that you might not have looked at. Do you think that we'll be able to get there, in the next few years?
I don't think we can really know where it's going to end up, right? So I think in my experience, in my own work, I ask a different question in different ways, and you're trying to really tease out exactly what it knows and what it thinks, not what it's trying when it's trying to please you. I know that people spending lots of time trying to feed it more and more examples to give more and more experience, so to speak, to AI. But I think with technology developing so fast, we really don't know where it's going to end up. But we do know that it probably would be most useful in terms of machine-to-machine communications, right? I think that's where it will excel because people don't want to machine ultimately. They want to talk to other humans. And I think we need to define that area where, AI, kind of Waymo machine gets to traffic light and they talk and something happens which magically makes your commute shorter. That's part I understand. But I don't want to talk to a traffic light, right? I mean, I don't want to be that proverbial drunk talking to a stoplight, right? I don't want to be talking to Waymo machine, right? I want to be able to talk to your audience and to people who actually use AI, right? So that's one part. I mean, I think the second part, you can make it smarter, but I think it's fool's errand to make it as smart as we are. It's not really that important, right? I think we have 9 billion people in the world and there are tons of people willing to do a bunch of different work. So don't give it everything to AI. You have to give it what it's really good at and where it has a competitive advantage because of how quickly it can calculate things on the fly.
Yep. So, I mean, I guess the obvious industry that is poised to benefit the most is technology and probably more specifically SaaS, to talk to the coding to fix itself.
Right.
Are there other industries that you would say are underestimating, what the benefit could bring to theirs?
Well, I think finance is the obvious one, right? All the compliance stuff they do can be automated very easily. I think the jury's out about accounting, right? So basic accounting, public accounting could be automated in many, many different ways. Tax advice could be automated. I think I personally have high hopes for biotech, right? So I think that looking for a compound through millions and billions of compounds that I can really help and shorten the time, right? And be ongoing all the time and they're very close, right? But I think maybe one couple areas where it's really would be unexpected would be personal medicine and utilities, right? Because both of those were ultimately extremely slow in adapting to technology, right? They're not very friendly to technology. It's not like a customer service where everybody knows what the answering question should be. So if we can solve something about medicine, make it a little bit more personal, And if we can solve it in utilities to make utilities much more efficient, that would be a huge breakthrough for everybody, for the whole society, not only for a particular company or a particular application.
Great, great answer. I appreciate that. So as we come close to the end here, who would you say would be the best fit? What kind of companies would you want to reach out to?
I think we want to reach out to companies that really understand that they have something and they want to get to the market and they don't want to waste their time chasing investors who they don't know anything about it, right? I think we just want to work with people who understand that we appreciate the technology, we're willing to spend the time, we're willing to roll the sleeves and work with them to make them from an innovative group of people an enterprise player. So that's what we want to work.
Okay, great. And where can our listeners learn more and get in touch with you and your partners?
We're at mavkacapital.com and feel free to find it. We have a great newsletter. Feel free to reach out to me directly and we can sign you up. And we cover all things technology and we're looking for a conversation.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, Misha, I really appreciate the time, your clarity and your honesty, and we'll look forward to following up with you as things progress in AI and in venture capital. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you very much. Fantastic conversation. Good luck. Love your podcast. Thanks.
Thank you.